I'm gonna go straight to the point. It's taken a top place for my Macintosh retro programming needs. I've used emulation for Macs regularly since 2004, so this is kind of a big deal. Old habits die hard. Snow version 1.0 was released on September the 4th, 2025, by someone who goes by the nickname of TWVD. It's very actively being developed to this day and has great contributions from other known developers in the community like Eric Elgeson of Bluescuzzy fame. I realize my needs for Mac emulation are a bit different from other people in the vintage Mac community, so this is not going to be a generic all-purpose review. I might not cover all the aspects that are important to you. I'm going to share thoughts on these topics. Is it easy to find and install? Is it easy to use? Is it good to code with? There's not a whole lot of videos on Snow so far, so let's fix that. Right off the bat, Snow is like an A-tier level of installation at the very least. It's a single executable file. It doesn't get simpler than this. There are versions for Windows, Linux, Mac OS, the whole usual deal we've come to expect for modern projects. You're responsible to manage the ROM files yourself. Thanks to a forum thread by Ron of Ron's Computer Videos, that's a solved problem. There are tons of Mac machine options here, as well as tons of emulator video card options. Immediately, I felt like I was free to explore many more machines and more disc-like in the HDA format, or diskette images in the form of .dsk or .move. The simplicity of one file for the emulator and at least one file for the ROM reminds me of mini-vMac. That emulator has been around since 2001 and was my gold standard for Mac Plus emulation. It feels like Snow is now its modern replacement. Right off the bat, let's make something clear. No emulator does it perfect when it comes to speed and feel. You can't replace the gaming experience of a fast action game you're getting on real hardware. Emulators might run every CPU instruction dutifully, but they have to make compromising choices on the rest of the architecture. With mini-vMac, I enjoyed this list of emulation speed multipliers that you can activate with keystrokes. Using the fastest one to blast through loading times is very satisfying. The 1x speed is still slightly faster than on real hardware, and I know because I ran a bunch of tests a few years ago. As for Snow, it just has a fast speed option that I like to use when you access drives or load stuff in. However, it messes up your double click detections and will repeat letters when you type, on some of the versions anyway. So I need to go back down on regular speed. It's just a toggle button, so that's not too fiddly to do. I communicated these issues to the developer TWVD, and since then, Snow has gained new items in the options menu. You can limit the fast forward speed with a slider. You can also cross your fingers and hope the dynamic fast forward makes the best decision at all times. So far, it's been a great amicable back and forth, and TWVD really deserves some praise for the openness at receiving feedback. Meanwhile, Basilisk II has this unchangeable fast speed. I enjoy it for compiling C programs, compressing or uncompressing files. This has been the main reason I've been using Basilisk II for Macintosh coding for more than 20 years. For gaming, though, let's just say that it's kind of bad. It's hard to put into words, but real hardware is still best for anything with action and reflexes. Snow can load .move files, which are relatively recent, coming up on 3 years ago by now. In case you don't know, these were made by the preservation community looking to capture magnetic flux disk data. This allows to get everything, including many bad sectors which were part of some copy protection schemes. You can already read these files on the hardware if you have a floppy emu device connected on the external disk drive port of old 68K Macs. Now we can run them in an emulator, and apart from the MAME emulator, it's the only other one that can do it. This allows to run original captures of the oldest software of the 84-86 period, anytime that was before hard disks were even expected. These programs could fit into one, maybe two disks at most, and needed to be inserted in a disk drive in order to allow themselves to be run. Another feature that you have to learn is transferring files between the host machine and the emulated environment. Snow copies what has been working great with BlueSCSI. You do it with this Macintosh app called BlueSCSI SD Transfer Toolbox, and it's going to expose a directory from your host machine. Just go to Tools, File Sharing, select Folder, then go to Tools, File Sharing, Insert Toolbox Floppy. Next, run the SD transfer inside Snow. As you can see, there's a list of files and a nice fat download button, but you can also upload through the file menu. As a programmer, this is a useful way to upload code source files to and from my PC, both ways as I manage my versions and releases. As for coding, oh my god, where do I start with this? First of all, Snow as the strongest contender for replacing Basilisk II forever for me. I can use a Mac 2CX environment and do both the coding and the running tests on System 6, which I could not really do before. I set it at 8 megs of RAM so that Symantec C++ can open without complaining. The killer feature is using this portrait display ROM. I don't feel too cramped with the classic 512 by 342 resolution that you had in Compact Macs. I don't really want to develop exclusively for System 7. Staying in the same environment for coding and running saves a lot of time. But wait, I haven't even scratched the surface yet. Snow tries really hard to be like a modern version of Max Bug by giving you live readings of pretty much everything. Just this memory viewing window is a gift. Want to try your hand at tight assembly loops? Check what influence your code has on the 68,000 registers. Want to see how complicated things are when you move a window around in the desktop? Check which ROM traps are called while the graphics are refreshed. Do you want to develop around a particular peripheral? There's a window for that. Understandably, these values change way too fast for the human eye, so that's why there's a breakpoint window for you. Just give it your trigger A-line trap function and it'll pause there for your convenience. Let's test that right here real quick for something that happens rarely like sys beep. And now I go to control panel and this should trigger it. You can see that the emulator is now paused. I can see the previous instructions that happened in the system trap history or even the full instruction history here. I'm not a Maxbug user expert or anything, but I think this is pretty dang awesome to have for any coder for that platform. The old developers back in the day would have killed to get all of these features, all this user interface, and the speed of it all. There's one big last thing that caught my attention in Snow, and that's how the serial ports are completely accessible from this ports menu. You can have a viewing access on whatever chatter they want to do. This is my recent Cozy MIDI, a standard MIDI file player that I just released in the last weeks. You can watch a whole video on my journey to make it, link in description. I can quickly test if I'm sending things correctly to the modem port. This option just makes a piano note, a middle C. It lasts for about a second before shutting off. We can see in the window that it works. Don't worry about the rest of this, that's just the initialization stuff that I sent out to silence all of the channels. A real wow moment happened when the Snow emulator could be made to communicate with your host PC directly through network TCP packets. You can enable a serial bridge to TCP port 1984 for the modem port and port 1985 for the printer port. In case you're not realizing what this means, let me help you get it. You can send out these data bytes in your home network, and you can use a program to catch them and do something with them. But since I've personally been on a MIDI journey for vintage computers, I was motivated to let my host PC detect the modem port and properly send the MIDI bytes coming from inside Snow out into the physical world to my hardware tower of MIDI power. All I need to bridge that gap is for a simple Python script to listen to TCP port 1984 and repackage those bytes into the USB port for my M-Audio MIDI interface. But wait, there's more. MIDI goes both ways, so the same script can listen for incoming USB transmissions from a piano controller, repackage it into TCP port 1984, and Snow will just freaking detect it. You can play music running classic MIDI programs. You can run a sequencer like Cubase 2.5 and compose in the old ways. You can use my upcoming FireJam app, where I turn a classic Mac into a live synth, including MIDI both ways. It can also interact with the System 6 and below sound driver with MIDI on the input side and the Apple sound chip on the output side. This saves a huge amount of time because my old workflow of doing all of this would be to compile something in Basilisk II, then package it in a .dsk file, and bring this SD card to my hardware Mac Plus in order to test any change. I've since discovered how to do something similar in Basilisk 2, but it's a Windows-only based solution, and it depends on two old third-party softwares which may not be available for all time. If you're interested in both how I do it in Snow and Basilisk 2, I've written threads about it in Tinker Different forum. Links below. So yeah, these are the reasons that make Snow an awesome emulator, at least for me. It exposes a lot more of the internal workings than others. It's super small and fast, and most importantly, has a vibrant and active code team. Let me know what you think if you've tried Snow or are about to try it. I'll catch you in the next vid.